So, two things since we're in the pre-show. First.
Oh wait, we're in the broadcast. We're in the broadcast on the air. You're in the broadcast. Oh snap! Oh!
Dude.
Oh, that's awesome! Oh, that looks so cool!
Yeah, it's a...
Oh my gosh!
Dude, they made it such a cool thing. So you, like, when you get to it, you have to pick out your, what style do you want, like, there's like 4 different styles you can pick from that are like...
oh, right on.
This was like more organic, and then there was a few others that are very mechanical or what have you. And then when you get inside, they bring up a tray for you that is like multiple pieces that kind of fit the general category. So they're like,
wow.
This is 2 pieces, this is 2 pieces, there's 2 pieces here, you pick the hilt, and the pommel I think is part of this too. But they're all different. So they're like, okay, from step 1, you pick 2 or pick a pair of these 4. For step 3, which is this, pick a pair of these 4. So even though they all kind of fit the same pattern, they're all different. So it basically means no matter what style you pick, you're always going to walk out with something completely unique to you. And then you pick your...
Oh, that's so cool.
And it starts off as just a tube, and you pick your kyber first.
Oh,
so
wow.
My son helped me pick the purple, and then the purple dictates this, and it's just... They made a whole production of it. It is... And it's awesome, because when you actually swing the thing around, it acts like... it flashes green like you're deflecting bolts. So and like flashes of green when you swing the thing, and it makes the sound effect.
Oh my gosh!
Oh my God, it is so
I feel like we could make the whole episode this.
Dude, it is.
I'm not joking around. Like I feel like we could. We have a lot to talk about, but I really do want to hear like your impressions of having gone there and like walking through that tunnel and how that experience was.
So many emotions, so many feels. On top of that, there's my blue milk container.
Here, hold on.
Bubba Wamba's Family Farm is what that translates to in Arabic. I had to do the translation, but this thing is so... I was like, no. Get some blue milk. I'm like, I'm getting some blue milk. She's like, okay. I'm like, well, I'm getting the novelty couch. She's like, of course you are. I'm like, of course I am. I'm like, so for anyone watching right now, there's Arabic on the front of this thing. It says, what is it? Bubba Wamba's... I can't do this. I'm trying to do this backwards. Bubba Wamba's Family Farm is what it says.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love that it lights up from the bottom too. It has a small little light in there, if I'm right, and it can light up from the bottom.
I didn't know that.
Yes. Yes.
I didn't know that. Oh my God, that makes... I'm so happy now. I'm so happy.
Yeah, you can. Any liquid that you put in there, it'll glow now from the bottom up.
I am so much more happy than I was before. This is amazing. Thank you.
And
let me... little switch on the bottom.
Let me tell you, as I know you're about to get the show on here, let me show you, because I can stand up here for a second, and here we are. The reason why I happen to know that is because this is not nearly ever far from what I've got. Yeah.
Oh yeah, my strap is right here. I took the strap off so I can carry it around a little bit more. But I got the strap right here. Cheers, buddy.
Yeah, hey, cheers. See, exactly. Dude. I saw you using this, by the way.
Oh, I've been using this in
a meet, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm right there.
I got home. My wife's like, "Are you just using that in meetings?" I'm like, "I have it. Why wouldn't I use it?"
Yeah, I love this
blue milk
thing.
was surprisingly good. We got it. And I was like, I'm not sure. We might dump it out. We'll see. And take a sip. I'm like, oh, this is actually really good. It's not. It wasn't very sweet. It's apparently totally based off coconut milk and a few other things like that. But it was really good. Yeah. I
liked the blue milk. I liked the green milk. I was more partial to the blue milk.
The blue milk was fantastic. We thoroughly enjoyed it. We actually thought about going back and getting a refill, but the line was like super long when we went back later. Like, yeah, forget it.
So did you know that you can order it online and actually be able to skip the line to get the blue milk?
I did not know that, But when we got there, when we actually got to Galaxy's Edge and I walked up, there was no one in line. Like, literally nobody. I'm like, she's like,
oh, wow.
Milk? I'm like, yeah, it's like 10 in the morning. Of course I do. And so I just walked right up. There was nobody there, and I just ordered my drink. And then when we came back later, there was like 25, 30 people in line. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's okay. It's fine.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it is like wildly popular. But I'm going through, what's really funny is we brought the boys there when they were very, very young. And it was really hot while we were there, and we were trying to figure out ways to like cool them down. And I don't know if you can see this. This is me and one of my sons here, and he's actually having the blue milk. Yeah, oh yeah. Because we were like, hey, maybe you'll like it, and we gave him the blue milk because it was so cold. Yeah. And yeah.
That's awesome.
By the way, parent of the year right here. I took a small child to Galaxy's Edge and then gave them blue milk. So I'm sure there's like someone who's calling type of protective services.
I tried to get my son to drink some of it, and he's like, no, I'm not. Okay, I'm like, whatever, dude. This stuff is, my wife and I were just like, she was actually carrying it, and I had my backpack on, and she was like, I'm just gonna hang on to this. I'm like, no, we're gonna split this.
Oh, it's delicious. Dude, I loved it. Yeah.
It was so good. All right.
Yeah,
I'm going to take us into the main show, and then we'll get started.
Let's do it.
Oh, it dropped her camera again. No.
It's okay. It'll all work itself out, I'm sure. Oh, hey, there I am.
Go. It's a super easy fix. Dude, how's it going? Happy birthday to the
hey.
Lord, by the way.
Oh, I by the way, like, big thanks to everybody who's joining us. It is Veterans Day in the United States. It is Armistice Day almost everywhere else in the world. Mm-hmm. And it's such a great thing. Thank you, everybody who's joining us. Thank you to everyone for your service. If you're a veteran, it's as Jeff knows, it's also my daughter's birthday, so she always has this day off. So yeah, it's exciting to be on the show. I think our first holiday show.
It is our first holiday show. It is, and yes, I echo what you said, Ryan. You know. Thank you for everyone's service who's watching, and we really appreciate everybody out there who's participated in some way in the military, family, themselves, people who've given their lives for it. It's a very meaningful day for a lot of people, and Cisco, our company, had the day off today, so we were doing our own things. Ryan's daughter's birthday was today. I was hanging out with the family, did some scooter rides, and now we're here with all of you to celebrate and talk about Star Wars stuff, because that's what we do. That's what we do.
Yes,
and we weren't here last week because I was in Southern California, as we were just talking about. If you didn't miss the pre-show, we went to Disney. We did a bunch of stuff. We actually took the trailer down. We were staying at a campground. It's literally 3 miles from Disneyland. Like, the street that runs right in front of Disneyland, we were 3 miles straight down that street. And so we just drove our car to... For anybody who hasn't gone in a long time, trick. The Toy Story parking lot is the parking lot to go to. You go there, there's correct. Like nobody who parks there, or very few, and then there's just a free shuttle that runs all day long, and it takes you like 5 minutes to get to Disneyland, and you just walk right in, and it has that shuttle system has its own separate drop-off and entrance from the rest of everyone else shuttling to different parking lots. So you walk over to the Toy Story one, which never has a line. You just get in and you just go back whenever you want. That was amazing. Like, we just got right in. We never had to deal with traffic in the parking lot. We just went right in. Like, you're way down the road from Disneyland, but whatever. You jump on a free shuttle and it's $30 for the day, and you can come and go as much as you want to, which was great because we went in. The day that we went to Disneyland, my son basically tapped out around noon. He was like, "I don't want to."
Yeah.
He got we caved and did a build a droid. So he built his own BB unit. So we have his droid. After that, a couple other things. He was like, "I don't want to be here anymore." We're like, okay. My parents had agreed to take him for 2 nights, so we left and drove to Long Beach, Lakewood actually, dropped him off with them, and we went straight back to Disneyland. And we spent the rest of the day by ourselves at Disneyland. We actually got a spot at Oga's Cantina in Galaxy's Edge so we could have beers.
Oh, that's awesome.
It worked out great. And yeah, it was a good rest of the afternoon. And then we did kind of the same thing the next day for DCA. Wife and I went to DCA for the day, but midway through the day, we're like, there's not a lot to do at DCA, at least not for us.
Yeah.
So we left like, I think at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, went back to our trailer, or RV, and we slept for like 2 hours, took a nap, ate a little food. We're like, hey, they're open till 9 o'clock. This is great. We went back around 6, did a couple other rides, hung out. Like, dude, this is the way you do amusement parks. You leave, you take naps, and then you come back.
I 100% agree. When we go down there, we've by the way, kudos to you on finding that Toy Story hack. My cousin Eric used to work at Disneyland, and he used to tell us that all the time. Like, oh, if you're ever driving there, like, go to the Toy Story parking lot. That's the one you want to go to. But whenever my family and I go down there, we've historically stayed on the Hotel Row, the good neighbor hotels or whatever that they call them.
Okay.
And we've stayed at I think it's like the Candy Cane Inn, which is right next to Disneyland. And then there's a couple other hotels that are down the road, and they've been really affordable. And it's nice because you can walk back and forth, or you can take the shuttles. And when you're there with small children, or even without, you just kind of need a break from everything.
Yes.
And honestly, I feel like it's not one of these things where it's like, oh man, like we got to shove everything in to like really maximize. No. It's, you start to get tired. There comes a point where you're like, I've had enough. I'd like a break. And you go back. My family, we've gone back, and then we go back out. And in fact, we've done one trip where we stayed on the site on the Disney location at the Grand Californian, and
beautiful hotel, by the way. Gorgeous hotel.
Absolutely beautiful. If you're a fan of craftsman style architecture, which my wife and I are, oh my God, like it's beautiful. But what was really nice is that you can walk back to the hotel and do exactly what you said, and then zonk out and then come right back. And there's restaurants all around there too. And even downtown Disney makes it really easy. Yeah. And this is all going to sound like I'm a huge Disneyland person. I am not. I am it was a long journey conversion to get me to like buy into this. I was like, I don't get it. I'm not a Disneyland person. I went to the before I had kids and went out there. The last time I'd been to Disneyland was when I was 18 years old for high school. And then after that, it was like I'd never even thought to go back there. And then going there with my kids was one thing, but even going there like for Galaxy's Edge, which it explains all the blue milk, all the bottles that you saw in the pre-show. It was just something else. So Jeff, I know that we've got obviously a lot to talk about, but I got to ask you, I feel like I was trying not to oversell, and yet I felt it was impossible for me to not sell Galaxy's Edge. I mean, I had it at, I think I said that it was going to live up to the hype, and I had brought it up to Hamilton level, like, oh, it's the greatest thing. So tell me, what was your experience like going into Galaxy's Edge, walking through that tunnel, and ending up there?
I will tell you what. So I forget what time it was in the morning. We had the story is we got into the park. We got over to Frontierland, kind of walked through that area. My wife really wanted to go, first and foremost, go on the Haunted Mansion. That was the thing she wanted to go on.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we got there, and we had a misunderstanding about something. So what didn't work, so we're like, let's go to Galaxy's Edge, and we'll come back. We were able to get a spot in line, and we'll come back. So we take, we just start walking. We walk around the backside of like where I forget the area that it's called, where past New Orleans Square, past the Haunted Mansion. We just keep going around. It kind of wraps around the lake up to Galaxy's Edge. And as we're walking back, I'm like, oh, we are clearly walking into something because the trees are changing, and you can see like the moisture evaporators, the lights are like in the side, like the technology. I'm like, okay. I'm like, this is cool. And then of course, when we come around the corner, you can hear the sounds, and we come around the corner, and as you come around the corner, you see the first building of Black Spire. I see this first building, and my wife, I think she caught it on video. I was holding my son's hand as we're walking, and she's kind of hanging back behind us. I started tearing up. I started tearing up because I'm watching this, and I'm like, it instantly, the sound effects, and I'm like, you walk past the A-wing and all these things. I'm like, I walk past this and it feels like I'm in a Star Wars set. Like I felt like they did such an amazing job with
it's immersive.
With the sound effects, the flora and fauna, the technology built everywhere. I mean, the buildings have the nuanced technology components built into every piece. So it feels like you're walking through like something you would see in Mos Eisley, or like the set of, I kept thinking, I forgot it was actually supposed to be a planet called Batu. I kept thinking it was Maz Kanata's castle. Like I thought we were walking onto, her planet, and because the way it was set up and the structures felt that way. But my God, the sound effects of ships coming in and out of the spaceport, several times. I just not thinking about it, looked up. Oh no, there's nothing up there, Jeff. Stop. My son asked several times. He's like, Dad, I know he goes, this isn't real, right? And he would look up periodically. I'm like, they did such a good job of, and because it wasn't just sound, it was like a rumble, and you felt it. And then you would walk out and see a shuttle on top of a building with its sublight engines would light up, and then you hear a sound effect, and you're like, they did such an amazing job structuring an immersive experience when you walk through. It is hard not, as a Star Wars geek, it is hard not to feel some kind of way when you walk in there. I totally did. And then everything else that you see and experience just makes you feel like you are part of this. I mean, seeing the Millennium Falcon up close, or as close as you can get to it, that was legit. Walking by the A-Wing and the X-Wing were just like, I mean, just goosebumps. You said it. Like just walking by, it was goosebumps the entire time, man. It was... It felt so cool. And then we'll talk about it in a minute, but like the lightsaber building experience, like I had my appointment in advance. We actually got there early because my son, I mentioned in the pre-show, he was not having it. He was like, he was done for the day. And so we did the build your own droid thing first. And then I'm like, my appointment's not till like 1:30. Let's just go over there. It's not super busy. Maybe they'll let us in early. And they did. They let us in at like 12:10. They're like, we have, you know what? We've got a spot. You can just take that. We'll just reschedule you. You can take that spot. I'm like, oh, fantastic. And so you wait for a little bit. They give you a little data card. So you sit out, and they give you a pin that you have to put in. I forget where the pin is, but you have a little pin that you have to put in your shirt, which indicates what type of lightsaber hilt that you want to build. And they don't tell you that. You pick your lightsaber hilt, and they give you this pin that you pin to your shirt. And then when you get inside, behind each station, there's a series of trays. And in the tray is all the parts to build whatever hilt that you picked. But no one says it to you. You just put the pin on so that it's just immersive from there. Like no one's asking you, hi, what kind of hilt did you want to build? Like it's not that. Like you walk in and these people come and say, we had to hide from the First Order. We're sorry. Because when they open the doors, they're like, everyone, hurry, quick, come on, quick, come in. And they rush you into the building and you rush inside and they close the doors behind you. And they're like, everyone be quiet. We just got to be careful. It's a terrible time to be here. The First Order. And they have this whole fun script that they go through. And then they walk you through how to physically construct your lightsaber. They walk around with these containers holding kyber crystals, and you pick out whatever color. And if they walk by and say, do you see your color? And then you say, like, somebody had taken all the purple ones. And I'm like, I do not. Okay. And they came back a moment later with, do you see your color? And you don't have to tell them. You just take the one you want, and they move on. My son helped me pick it out. He goes, I like purple, Dad. I'm like, done. So we grab purple. Assemble all your pieces, screw them all together. People walk around to help you, and then when you're done, they set it in. Like if you haven't watched the YouTube videos about it, you set it down. A person walks by and picks it up and kind of inspects it and goes, okay, sets it back down again. Then they come around the outside and they plug it into this like tube-like thing that looks like a half dome sort of structure on the table, and they start talking, and all of a sudden the lights kind of flash and dim, and Master Yoda's voice comes over and says something, and they're all like, all the people working there are like, he says something like he just says something enriching. I don't remember what it was. And they're like, my God, that was Master Yoda. And then all of a sudden they're like, and the lights dim again, and all the lightsabers light up. Like these like cylinder like structures light up, and then they all just automatically open, and your assembled lightsaber is plugged into the end of it, and when the thing opens up, then you see your blade. So here, I'll see if I can get the sound effect, because it's fully built in with sound effects too. I don't know if you can hear that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can hear it. I can hear it. It's amazing.
It's not super obvious that it's purple on this screen, but it comes out like this. And then they have everyone hold their lightsabers up like you're being knighted, and Yoda's voice comes over again, and everyone holds their lightsaber up, and they do this whole ceremony. And it's, dude, I was tearing. I was like, eyes are watering up while I'm doing this. I'm like, oh my God, this is so awesome. I walk out.
Oh,
My son's like, Daddy, can I hold it? This thing weighs probably 3 or 4 pounds at least. It may be 5 pounds. I mean, it's solid metal construction. It is not. It's not one you're gonna dual like play. I mean, you could. I mean, it's just a plastic tube, so it can take the level of impact, but it is robust. This thing is not a toy by any means. Like if you drop this on like an iPad or something, you're gonna break the iPad. Like it is robust.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Did you start when you got the pin? Because see, I haven't gone through this. So when you've got the pin, did you select like the hilt style, or like basically like, because I can see like, for example, you have what looks like, I'm just gonna take a whack. It looks like some type of horn or like a scarlac finger.
Let's see if this.
Wow! Look at all the detail on that. That's
so you can see there's like wood graining, almost like leatherish, but sort of wood graining here. The similar type of symbols. Let me try to get this to focus here. Where is it? Right. Come on, focus. Come on, focus. There we go. Kind of there, similar symbols. And then, mine has a horn. Yeah, a horn here at the bottom. So when you walk, the way it works is when you walk up, it's kind of transactional to start with. When you walk up, there's a kiosk, like when you're buying the blue milk. You walk up, there's a person at the cash register, and they say, okay, you have to confirm your appointment first before you can walk up and do anything else. So if they have your appointment, you're good. Otherwise, you're not going to do this. And then they have on like a mat on the counter that says, what style of hilt would you prefer? And there's 4 styles. And there's like elemental, mechanic, and there's like 2 others. I forget what they're called, but it shows you a picture that is just a general version of what the style of hilt could be. And then they say, okay, you just pick that, and then they pull out. When you pick it, you say, this is the one I want. Okay, they ring it up. They're all the same price. They ring it up, and they pull out from under a tray. They pull out a little plastic baggie, and they hand to you that has the pin inside. And I realized shortly after when I looked around that several people had different. The pin, it's like an oval shaped. If I have it, I'll find it before the show's over. It's sort of an oblong shape that has a design inside. And that indicates to the people working there, I realized, what you picked. I picked elemental. And then when you get inside, so that happens, and they hand you a data card, a plastic data card. Mm-hmm. It's got Arabesh on it. You sit down. Then when you walk inside, that's like your pass to get into the building. So you walk up, you've already put the pin on. You have to be wearing the pin. You hand them the data card, and you walk inside. And then they take you into this room that's like a big oval-shaped room with like mechanical shit stuff everywhere, like structures and things laying against the wall, like scrap metal. It looks like you're just in some random workshop on Tatooine or whatever, like just scrap on racks everywhere, like highly detailed. Like there is no opportunity in this space and in the lightsaber space, as well as the rest of Galaxy's Edge. There is no opportunity missed for including stuff, cables, junk, whatever, to feel like you're actually in a place. You're in a real place. They didn't just like leave it up to like, here's wall and some spackle on the wall and it's painted. No, there's something everywhere. So it feels like you are in a place. So while you're in there, you all stand in front of a station. It's like a big oval shape. And there's stations, very clearly marked stations. You can stand in front of one. And then behind the station on the person working there, based off of your pin, there's a stack of trays. They pull out a tray and set it in front of you based off of what you have. And they handed me a bunch of parts that generally fell into this like elemental category. But I looked over and everybody had kind of a different tray. Some people had the same as me. Most people had something else. And then what they do is it gives you these clearly built out instructions that say, you're going to start with step 2, because step 1 is basically this long tube that is the base of the entire lightsaber. It's just a metal tube. It's just a cylinder with a cartridge in the middle where you put your kyber crystal. So once you pick your kyber crystal, they come around and you pick out your color. Then you plug it in a particular way. You hit a button and when the crystal lights up, you know the machine is working. It's good to go. It's working. Then what you do is on the tray, we were talking about this in the pre-show. It's kind of hard to see here, but there is, if I can focus on this, I don't know if you can see it, but right here, there's a little line that is a seam. So all of these parts, this section right here in this area, this section here in this area, this section, and this piece are all this comes as 2 pieces, this is 2 pieces, this is 2 pieces, and this is a piece that screws on. And I think even this top part is a part that, this is a part that screws on too. There's like 8 pieces to this whole thing. So you get a tray that has like 16 or 18 pieces on it. And so you actually go through and pick and say, for step 1, for this part of your hilt, here's 4 trays. Pick which pair of these you want for this piece. So you pick a pair. Cool. Mm-hmm. Clamp that onto this location. For this next area, here's 4 more pairs. Pick a pair that you want. So they all generally have the same kind of style, but they're all different. So even when you build your own lightsaber, if you pick in, like my case, Elemental, you're still going to pick from like 6 different options in the same style. So even if the person next to you got the same thing as you, you're not going to, unless you pick the exact same choices, you are not going to walk away with the same lightsaber as the person next to you. It'll look, it's going to look different. So each part looks different. And then there's the scripting and how the people walk you through the encounter and all of that. And it just, they do such a good job. It makes the entire experience feel worth. I mean, even telling this, you going through it, especially if you went through it with your kids right next to you, because when you get the tickets, only you can build it. Like they only let one person actually touch and do the building. So if your kids are with you, or 1 or 2 kids, or they won't let a whole bunch in, because there's really just not a lot of room. It's actually pretty cramped. Yeah. They can stand next to you and talk, and that's what my son did. He's kind of standing there. He like pointed to stuff. He's like, "Dad, that one. Daddy, this one." Okay. Yep. But even saying all of this, going through the experience, I don't think it would diminish it at all. It was very emotional, even for me. I walked out. My wife could tell you. I even walked out just like, oh, this just happened. I can't believe this just happened.
But I think you hit you said the perfect word, which is it's an experience. It was something that I felt exactly the same way. Mm-hmm. Although I didn't do the lightsaber component, I remember just feeling like, oh wow, like I remember just being like, I don't know, like just very happy. It was almost gleeful. And you're just in this world that feels suddenly so real. And everybody that's there is like committed to the max. Like no one's there messing around. And because there are so many other people that are there, they're also really big fans. Everybody's kind of like in on the bit. You know what I mean? And so there's no one that's there that's like, or at least the one I've gone, there's no one that's there that kind of took me out of the experience. Now, I got a couple other questions for you. Mm-hmm. And I know that we're going to get to this. We're going to get to this. And we can, and honestly, I'm like prepped for this, like up here, I can do this all day. And I also want to talk about a thing that I saw on Twitter, like right before the show started, which was someone leaked the Kenobi trailer that's coming out tomorrow.
I know. And I'm avoiding it. I'm avoiding it until tomorrow.
I saw it, dude. And I'm already there. So okay, I'm not. It's fine. I will say that there's a line in Return of the Jedi that I had forgotten, and it's not. Because I only saw pieces of the trailer the way that they put it together. I only saw pieces of the trailer, so this is a non-spoiler. If it is in there, it's not because I saw it, but I thought of it. Right when I saw things, which was Vader talking to Luke and saying, in Jedi, and saying, Obi-Wan once thought as you did. And that always, that stuck with me, because there's another thing, which is Obi-Wan says he's more machine now than man, twisted and evil. But the last time he would have seen Anakin, according to like the way that we would have seen canon, is he left him on the side of a volcano and was like, good luck. So yeah, there's a lot of really interesting, so a lot of really interesting thoughts that came out. That was my thinking when I saw what I saw, was Obi-Wan once thought as you did. So I'll leave it at that. That was my impression. But okay, I want to get back to Galaxy's Edge. Did you ride on the Millennium Falcon?
We did. That was hard.
I can't wait to hear what your thoughts were.
It was so much fun. A couple of things. It was so much fun. We really needed to be in that cockpit with other people. We didn't, because of COVID and all that type of stuff, and being safe. So it was my wife, my son, and I, and he wanted to be a pilot. He's like, no, I want to be a pilot. My wife's like, I'll be a gunner, no problem. The problem is he's 6. So they put him in charge of the side. They put him in charge of the side to side, and me and the up and down. And I didn't know what to expect. They were moving us through the whole thing so fast. I'm like, dude, some stuff and cool. Yeah, no, we got it. Great. Okay, cool. We get into the cockpit, and Hondo Ohnaka comes on. And by the way, when we walk into the first main bay, when Hondo's up there talking to you as the animatronic talking, I just blurted out, I'm like, oh, hey, Hondo. And my wife's like, Jeff, calm down. And like 5 people turn around and all look at me. And I could tell the look on their faces, like they had no idea what I was talking. I'm like, it's Hondo Ohnaka. Like, how don't you know who Hondo Ohnaka is? I'm like, it's Hondo. Anyway, I was a total nerd. It was fantastic. But we're sitting in this cockpit, and my son he's just sitting there kind of like mesmerized because it's immersive. And you feel the tilts and the... Yeah. So we get going, we get launched into hyperspace, and you're flying. Also, you pop out of hyperspace, and you just dive into a planet. And I'm like, oh, my stomach like flies up. I'm like, okay, having a little panic attack. Okay. And you have to start flying immediately. And so I grab my handle, I'm doing the up and down, and it's the whole reverse thing that confused me. But he's like, Daddy, I don't know what to do. He's like, I don't, and we started ramming into stuff. I'm like, okay, I'll try to do it for you, buddy. So I'm like, holding onto mine, leaning over, trying to do this. And if you've been on it, as you have, you're like, how would you do that? I'm like, well, not successfully at all. We ran into every single obstacle. And of course, in that flight sim, if you run into an obstacle, you feel it. The whole thing just shakes and jolts.
You hit something, the whole thing jerks you to the other side.
So it was a blast. But later on the day, as we left, my wife asked, she's like, "Oh, I think I can get the 2 of us into Rise of the Resistance." I'm like, "No, I'm good. Thanks." I'm like, "I'm good." Like that was awesome. But like just the 2 of us in this thing, I'm like, I think I'm gonna be sick to my stomach if I do the next one.
Oh no, I mean it is one of those things where I imagine that it's like the set of The Mandalorian, because you sit in the cockpit, and I was like, I looked all the way up above me, and I was like, oh wow, like I can see everything around me. Like at no time was I somehow aware of where the screen ended where it was. And because you're in there, right? And the first time I did it, I was the engineer. And then another time I did it, I was the gunner. And it's a little bit easier for people who've ridden the ride. You'll know this, but there's like all these things that'll flash, and that'll basically tell you when to do something, which reminds me a lot of like 1980s video games where it's like the thing flashed, you got to push the button. And but the people who are the pilots have literally the hardest job. They give you absolutely no instruction, and everything's really dependent on you. And what's hilarious is that I did not get a chance to go on this with my 3 daughters, but because with just the way that it broke out, like it worked out easier that my 3 daughters and their cousins all were in a cockpit together. If there was a video of this, there's things I wish I had in life. And it's the video of these girls trying to get all of the everything working. And so my 2 daughters are in the pilot and the co-pilot, and in their classic ways where they are at times fire and water, the ship crashed everywhere. And so the ship's going up, it's going down. My oldest daughter's yelling at my middle daughter. My middle daughter's yelling at my oldest daughter. And all I thought of is this is great. Like, this is a great family memory. And the way that this story is told is just that they were just trying to keep the ship from exploding. But yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty much how our experience went too. My wife was the gunner, so she just sat there and went, button.
Yeah, you
button.
just hit the button.
That's all she did.
And I was all about it. I was like, because I was the engineer first, and I was kind of like, oh, this kind of sucks, because I was like, I want to be flying the ship, right? And I even thought, like, it was so funny. Like, here I'm like super excited. I'm walking on the ride essentially, and I've waited 0 minutes. They walked me right on the ride, and so I was actually like, even though I was the engineer, I was like, oh man, I wish I was doing something else, but I wasn't complaining at all because I walked right on the ride and I got to be a part of this. And then you just take off, and I at one point we were in the thing, and I realized, oh crap, I've got to be pushing this button to keep the thing going.
Yeah.
And that was like, you get so caught up
It is
in
immersive.
the experience.
Yes, they did such a great job of making you feel like you are doing something. Like it feels you are there. Like I felt like I was on an actual roller coaster for a large portion of the experience. I really did. Yeah, it felt great.
I know we're going to get to this, and I'm going to, and I keep pointing to it. But I'm going to ask you then one last question, which is, they have a lot of unique foods and drinks there.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find something that you really liked, or was there anything that you tried outside of the way? I know we talked about the blue milk, and that's delicious. But is there anything that you tried that you really liked?
So we didn't really eat in Galaxy's Edge. My wife's a vegetarian, and so as we were looking for places to eat in the park, we have to make sure we can find a place to eat that has things that actually do work for her. But what we did do is, since we came back to the park, and that's how we got it, we did a lot of the other experiences across the park, but in Galaxy's Edge specifically, after my son was already dropped off at my parents' house, we were able to get a spot. We were able to get a random, I don't know how we scored it. My wife was able to score a reservation at Oga's Cantina. So we were able to get over there, go into the cantina and have a couple of beers and just hang out. And there's a droid. I think I sent you a video. There's a droid who's actually DJing. And at one point the droid's like, the droid kind of like DJs and, I don't know what's happening, and just stopped. And you're like, oh, okay. Music just stopped. And then a dude comes, or somebody comes running out of the back. I shouldn't say a dude, probably different people all the time. Comes running out of the back. Sorry. And starts like right at the front of the bar. There's a big machine. Starts banging on it and turning wrenches. And everyone's like, come on. The bartender's like, hurry it up. He's like, I'm working on it. And all of a sudden, and the droid comes back alive. And he's like, we're good. And then runs in the back. And he fixed the DJ, and the DJ starts back up again. And we're like, this is pretty. I'm like, okay, even the littlest detail down to that, like a repair skit, basically mini skit. But to your question about food, we got a couple of beers, which are actually legit local beers, which is great. Right. And they had a sampler platter, like that you could get of like just bar snacks that was like dried like tomato wheels of some kind, and then there was like seaweed, and a couple other things in there that they were called different names, like galactic type names, and they were good. Like it was just good snacks, like some just basic bar snacks, but like up-leveled bar snacks basically. So that's the one thing I think we actually did eat while we were there. But it was cool. Like that was great. We had a couple beers. It was a nice break from walking around for a while. Lots of detail. Actually, I was watching A New Hope with my son just before we started recording, before we put him to bed. And I was realizing in the cantina in Mos Eisley, all the containers that have the drinks in there, the bartender's pouring from, that look like basically like a gutted IG-88 head, essentially. And
that is exactly what it is. It is exactly that. They repurposed that head for, or they repurposed it from that set for IG-88's head. Yes.
Which is perfect. So that's all there. That's how it is in Oga's Cantina too. So all the things that are set up for all the drinks,
I love it.
It's the exact same. It's exactly the same. My wife actually asked, she goes, is this from Mos Eisley? I'm like, no, it's a different planet, but this is the same layout. And actually it's a very practical thing that they do. Just like they do on the set or in the movies, is there's no alcohol bottles behind the bar for the bartenders to pick up and mix drinks. They're all pre-mixed where they pour them out into a cup. They might add some, like there was one drink that had all kinds of weird foam that came out of it. So they have a separate machine that they like mix up the foam and pour the liquid in and mix and add all this foam and do a thing with it. So they it's not just like pour liquid hand to person. They do something with it, but they're also not like cocktailing it up and throwing bottles and stuff around. It's like, it actually simplifies, I think, the work for the people who were working there, which is really good. But yeah, it looked just like Mos Eisley. Pour stuff out of an IG-88 head. Here's your beers. Here's your cocktails. It was really cool.
Yeah, I loved it. By the way, I saw a comment from Rich. I was going to try to say that, which is Rich's job is safe. Because obviously droids cannot be trusted as DJs.
No, he broke down. Rich, he broke down halfway through the show, dude. Halfway through the set, he broke down. Someone had to repair him. So you will never be replaced, my friend.
No. And again, anybody who's listening, Rich has a show. You can listen to it every Sunday. We'll post a link in the chat. But you can listen to it every Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific. So again, and Rich doesn't break down. The other thing that I would say is that if you do end up at Galaxy's Edge, and we're going to get to this topic right after this, if you do end up in Galaxy's Edge, if there is a drink that I can recommend, and it's not in Oga's Cantina, but there's an alcoholic version of it, it's called a sour sarlacc.
Ooh.
And it is a drink that is a combination of several different things like soda water and whatnot, but it's also got raspberry syrup and spicy mango syrup. This drink was so delicious that I learned to I ordered the components and had it sent to my house so I could make it here. And it is good both as a regular soft drink and also if you wanted to add in your favorite adult beverage like tequila or anything else. It actually, tequila is the perfect mixer for that. But yeah, absolutely delicious. I loved all the food there. Sounds like you guys did too. Sounds like you had a heck of a trip.
We had a great time.
And yeah, and Jeff, I am sorry that I have deviated so far from what we were supposed to talk about today.
It's totally okay. You know what? We do this sometimes. There's just some stuff that we need to talk about, and we talk about it, and it's all good. You know what? Because we talked about lightsabers. I can't say enough about hitting my headphone cable over here. Like, this thing has made me so beyond happy. I'm not gonna lie. There's been a couple meetings this week where I finished the meeting and I'm like, I need to stretch my legs, and I'm like, I'm gonna grab the lightsaber, and I step out. I open up the double doors of the shed, and I step out, and I just start swinging my lightsaber around.
100%.
You know what? I feel good now. I
get
do.
that.
I do.
Yeah.
I figured you'd get that.
Yeah. Easily. I mean, it's all the time. I will say this, and this is a comment especially for Rich. The Galaxy's Edge experience is so great. The closest thing that I had before that was in Las Vegas. They had a thing called Star Trek: The Experience, and that was a very immersive. Yes, it was in the Las Vegas Hilton. It was an amazingly immersive experience. Nothing like Galaxy's Edge, obviously, but you did get transported. And to this day, I can't figure out how that happened. I still don't know how the whole room changed. Even my brother, who is not a big sci-fi person, we still talk about this. If anybody knows how they did it, I'm sure there's a YouTube video on it. But if anybody can remember how they did it, I'd love to know. You get transported. You're standing on a platform. All the lights go out. You feel this rush of air, and you hear the transporter sound. And when the lights come back on, it's only momentary. And the thing that my brother can always remember is the floor was different. It was not just the room around us, that the floor had changed as well.
Interesting.
And to this day, we still don't know how that effect happened. And
this is a huge regret then. I stayed there years ago when I was working at one of my first technology companies companies I worked at in technology. I had to go to Vegas for some sort of hardware training. I think it was firewall training. And I was staying at the Hilton, and I remember going downstairs and seeing the Star Trek experience, but it was the Hilton was like completely empty when I was there, but like that area was like, there was nobody there. And so I walked around, I saw it, I'm like, I don't know if I really like, come have food and drinks. I'm like, I think I was still in a mode of like, I'm not super comfortable by myself just going and sitting in a bar. Like these days I would have been like, let's just do it. But back then I wasn't totally into it. I completely missed that experience. I did not go into that area and take advantage of that experience, but I was there for an entire week in that hotel, and I did not take advantage of that experience. That is a missed opportunity.
I am such a Star Trek fan. I had to go to it, and it did not disappoint in the same way that the Galaxy's Edge did not disappoint. And but in both of them for the same reasons. It goes a long way when everyone that's there wants to be there, one, and two, when all of the experience around it is wildly immersive. You might even say that there were heroes on both sides.
Look at you.
That was a really rough. I was pushing it in. And with that seamless segue,
It was just it just happened. No one even noticed it.
Right, we just rolled right out.
We're just here now.
Jeff, you found this TikTok and with Dave Filoni, and maybe it would be good if we start there with with background on this.
Absolutely. So I didn't have it queued up the video, but if you look at the show notes for tonight's, actually you go in there right now, you'll see a link to it right now. There's a featurette on StarWars.com you can watch. This is specifically related to a TikTok that I found. I think I have the link for the TikTok, but I'll post it as well. And the TikTok is just a 1.5 minute version of this like 6 or 8 minutes featurette on StarWars.com, and it's an interview of Filoni talking about specifically the episode of the Clone Wars called Heroes on Both Sides. And it's an episode where Ahsoka is with Anakin and Padme, and it's an episode where they set up Ahsoka to basically have a sister episode with Padme, where she's going to take her away from Anakin and under her wing to sort of teach her politics, or at least give her a taste of politics. And Ahsoka is shocked when she finds out that one of Padme's really good friends is a separatist. She's like, wait, what? And you can tell through the entire episode, and Filoni describes this in this interview, that it's a complete shock to Ahsoka, because everything she has been raised to know and she has experienced as a Jedi, in the Clone Wars especially, has been that the Separatists are bad. They left for these not great reasons, and now we have to fight them. Of course, her experience is with the droids and the droid armies and the armies and things like that. It's not with the people of these worlds or the politicians or the leaders. It's with the frontline armies. So she goes with Padme to this planet where the Separatist parliament, I guess, is located. She meets a young man named Lux Bonteri, who is, I think, the son of Padme's really good friend. I won't go through all the details, but in the episode, she is Ahsoka is basically she is taught, as Adam Grant would say in the book I literally just finished reading yesterday, his book Think Again. She is forced to rethink how she views not just the conflict, but the reasons these people have done what they've done. And I appreciated it, and it inspired me when I saw that to want to do an episode about that. And I know we won't have as much time today as we want to probably talk about this at length, but what it really triggered for me is that so often now, especially in the United States, but I would say globally, this isn't unique to the U.S. Globally, we're all dealing with these sorts of problems. The U.S., we've had a very stark contrast with our last election and all that type of stuff, where there's this sort of both sidesing of things. And I don't want to get too far into the right and the wrong, but what I really loved about the idea is that you and I have talked about this many times on this show and in other places, where there is no such thing as two sides to a story. There are many, 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 almost innumerable sides to any story. There are so many perspectives on a situation that's happening. It is not binary. It is never binary. It has never been binary. Anyone who thinks so is grossly misinformed. That's too easy. It never is. And I think the idea of heroes on both sides is almost an allegory to me of the way that we think about how we individually view everything around us. It's us and the rest of the things, because we're a person and we think about it like that. That's human nature. And I loved this idea because it really, you see Ahsoka be shook by learning that they're just people. And they're people who have been told by Count Dooku that the Republic is corrupt. They're being led by somebody in power is controlling the shot. It's a Sith Lord. That's terrible, objectively. We need to get away from it. That's causing mass amounts of corruption in the Republic. And hey, by the way, the things that you're seeing that are not happening for you, that's due to this corruption. And they're like, of course it is. We've been seeing this for years. You know what? We're good, and we're going to leave. And so from their point of view, they have absolutely done the right thing. Like, there's a Sith Lord running the Empire, running the Republic. Yeah, that's bad. Everyone would say objectively that is a bad thing. And so when Ahsoka sees that, and we as the audience consume that, you're like, it's the first time we actually get to see, as the audience member, through Ahsoka's perspective, that there is a whole other set of beliefs that are going on here that we have never been shown before. We even shown one of the parliament meetings of all the senators there talking and listening. Dooku's, obviously we know Dooku is a pawn, but in the moment he's playing sort of like the grand facilitator of these meetings. And you watch it and you're like, wow, they really do. They have a very valid point. It's a really good point. And so I thought that would be a really interesting thing for us to talk about, because we see it so often in the real world, and it was really well showcased in that particular episode. But of course, after you watch that one episode, it almost means you need to go back and rewatch so many other episodes of the Clone Wars, because you get to see, oh my gosh, if I had known that information, all these other episodes look almost completely different than they did before.
Yeah, I actually think this is one of the huge missed opportunities that I feel like Dave Filoni kind of pulled out, because there's two parts of this. The heroes on both sides thing actually comes from a line in the preamble, the opening crawl of
Return of
episode
the
3.
Sith. Yep.
And it says, there's heroes on both sides. Evil is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because, and by the way, there are moments in history where there are righteous wars that happen where it's like there is definitely a bad guy and there are definitely good guys, and even multifaceted as much as you want. But I was thinking about this in terms of something more like the English Civil War, like a Lancaster Stark type of thing, where you have the Lancasters and the Starks, and they're fighting each other essentially for the throne of England. And you have heroes on both sides, and you have evil being everywhere. You have bad people on both sides, and you have heroes on both sides. And the reason why I felt this was a missed opportunity, okay, I'm going to summarize it like this. My son, one of my sons, has a toy that is a stormtrooper. It's a clone trooper.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a toy that my child can play with that is the hero. And when he got that toy, I was like, that's the bad guys. Those are the bad guys. And this is what I mean by it. It's a missed opportunity. I actually can totally buy in that, especially as you get to understand the clones and their relationship with the Jedi, how it's actually quite heroic, this relationship that they have and this trust that they have for one another and this work that they're putting into trying to save the galaxy from the evil Separatists. But a thing that when I was watching the prequels that I always anticipated was that the Separatists that we would meet would be people like Admiral Akbar's people, or Neeb Nub's people, or all of these other aliens, because I thought, oh, the Separatists are obviously going to be the Rebel Alliance. And that's when we see the Rebel Alliance, it will have been what the Separatists were. And even when their ships came out, I was like, oh, their ships are all this like shell shape. This is obviously the people that we're rooting against are going to be the people that we're rooting for in the original series, in the original trilogy. I thought that was going to be the heel turn. And they got lost somewhere in there, because I feel like they were like, no, the Separatists, they're this evil group. I mean, it's the Trade Federation, it's the Techno Union, it's all of these, like, oh yeah, clan. They're the banking clan, it's all these. And I thought, and even it's the Quarrens and not the I can't remember what Admiral Akbar's people are, but it's not them. And that's when I thought, oh,
the Mon
you guys
Calamari.
missed Mon Calamari. Thank you, Mon Calamari. You guys missed an opportunity here. Because the heroes on both sides is actually a really great thing to talk about from not just a perspective that you're talking about, which I feel like is a very big topic. Like, that's a thing where it's like, there are in the fog of war, sometimes it's hard to see who is just and who is not. But then on the other side, I actually thought about this just from the perspective of storytelling. And I thought, you guys vilified these people too much. Because obviously these are the same people, as you pointed out, that would have been like believing what Count Dooku said, which is Count Dooku's like, hey, there's a Sith Lord running the Republic. We got to get out of here, and we gotta protect ourselves. And that there's got to be a lot of righteous people, like Lux. I know exactly the Clone Wars episode you're talking about, but I would have loved to have seen this more in the movies, and it would have been easy to show it in the ships. That they're the ones that are using X-Wing style fighters, or they're the ones that are using Y-Wing style fighters, or something else. But instead, they vilified them too much. And so then the Rebel Alliance comes out of another separatist group in the Senate.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
No, 100%. Yeah, I would have loved to see the undertones of the Separatists, or what we see in this, played out, even if subtly, through the rest of the Clone Wars series. Because, to your point, if it's in the ships, the music, the locations, whatever, then you're forced as an audience to have to reckon with what those people are dealing with. It can no longer be just abstracted by, here's the droid army in front of them and some gnarly general behind them, and that's the end of it. You have to actually reckon with, there are real people here who see this from a very different perspective than you do, and neither of you are right or wrong. You're both just seeing different sides of the same conflict, but you're not talking to each other. And Padme actually says that in the episode, we're not talking to each other. That's the breakdown here, is we're not sitting down and just having a conversation with one another. We're pushing ourselves apart and then abstracting in the middle armies that don't talk because they're there just to fight. That would have been really, I think, a hard thing for people in an audience to really wrap their heads around. And I mean that in the best possible way. I mean that in a really good way. Like, that would have been the sort of hard that you want your audience to go through, to be like, this isn't just a war. This is something much, much deeper than that. It would have, there was an opportunity to make it a more, not dark, but intense.
Gray, if you will. I feel because, again, it's one of these things where it's like, in conflicts over time, the victors invariably write the history books, and so they'll write them to their advantage, and you'll have and again, like, there's definitely times in history where people chose a very wrong thing to do, and you're on the wrong side of history. I'm sorry. There is the goods, there's the right thing to do, and then you're on the wrong side of history, so you got to eat that. There's no coming back from it. But there are other conflicts that are a little bit different. And I even think about how the colonization of the Americas, and how it's like, we're dealing with raids by the indigenous people. How dare they? And it's like, well, no, on their side, it's like, hey, you're taking away their homes and their land. Yeah. You're interrupting the way that they've lived for thousands of years. So often conflicts are not, as you would say, they're not just binary. That's not just a black and white. And it's often, there's multifaceted elements that are in every conflict. But in this storytelling in particular, I love the idea of, there's heroes on both sides, there's evil everywhere. And what would have been great would have been, and this is where I feel like they kind of made a misstep with Dooku, and maybe even General Grievous, is that those characters could have also been on the a side of, I understand them, and especially if they were like, but instead it's like General Grievous is almost like a mustache twirling villain. He totally is.
Yes.
Count Dooku is Count Dracula. You know what I mean? It's like they were so, and the Techno Union, none of the Separatists seem like, oh man, these guys, like, I get their motivations. No, they just seem like they were set up to be bad guys, when the real bad guys are the ones that are, oddly, the ones we're cheering on in the prequels, which are the stormtroopers. Mm-hmm. These are the people that kill Luke and Luke's aunt and uncle. They're throwing Ewoks. They are a rough group. And that's not to say that some of the clones, for example, before Order 66, aren't serving honorably, and they're doing what they're trying to do. And again, that's the heroes on both sides. Evil is everywhere. And it's just the acknowledgement that this other group might have had a good point of view, but they didn't write the Separatists that way. There is no good point of view. The Separatists are built to be just like solid villains. Again, that Techno Union guy, he's just like, he's crazy looking.
Yes.
And it's just, and the Trade Federation. I mean, the Trade Federation is set up to just be villainous.
Oh my gosh, the Nemoidians. Yeah. Just like the Nemoidians are just like written to be just creepy dudes who do bad things because they're swarmy, and that's it. And it's like, that's not. I don't.
It's a missed opportunity.
Huge missed opportunity. I do not really care for when you have antagonists that are throwaway. They're just the bad guy. They're just creepy, and that's it. It's like, no, because one of them probably is, but one of them always is in any race that you go to. Like, there's always a subset that are not great. That doesn't make the entirety not great. And when you make it out to be, or make it seem like that's the case, that you're saying, we're stating that we're extrapolating that this one person represents the way that their entire race is, with the exceptions of maybe like the Mandalorians. That's one of the few exceptions, but that's a different sort of exception.
Yes,
when they do things like the Techno Union and the Moons, the Muns with the Banking Clan and groups like that, it's like I don't really care for how they treated, to your point, and made them they're just villainous. It's like, but that's not. Some of them probably were, or very clearly were in league or in cahoots with the groups that were trying to actually manipulate things. But most probably were not. They just thought, we were told something, we believe it, and we're responding with the information that we have. And that's what all of us would do. To your point, like, to use a very clear example, I would say, at least clear for both of us, I would say hopefully most people, would be World War II, specifically the Nazis. But what's interesting is even when you think about this, I want to say that, well, there was good done on both sides. We're not going down that path.
No.
But what I will say is that there were history has shown that there are plenty of German citizens most German citizens, I would say, leading into the early mid 30s and the hard times that their country was falling on, they were looking for somebody to help because they were, starving and couldn't find food. Their economy had crashed. They were looking for somebody to help them. It didn't just happen where the next day Hitler showed up and said, "We're Nazis and we're doing all of these things." That's not how it played out. It happened over 10 or more years. And they slowly. And again, I'm not saying I'm not defending.
But that's a warning. That's a warning for all people. Like,
yes.
Again, people that don't acknowledge their histories don't understand how fascism rises back up.
Exactly.
Like, I'm not to make this like wildly political, but it's like the big thing that I always think about is that if you don't read history, I mean, obviously this is a cliche, but you're destined to repeat it. And people don't realize that how fascism starts, how dictatorships start. And again, you see it even in Star Wars, that there is this it's like an ignorance of history. It's an ignorance. It's the belief of things that you start to make decisions that and it starts very small, but big things often have very small beginnings. And it starts very small, but then you can inch your way to terrible, terrible things like fascism. And that is one of those things where you then end up on the wrong side of history.
Yes.
There are definite things that it's like you are on the wrong side of history.
Agreed.
And even in Germany, it's one of those things which is exactly what you're saying, which is it starts small.
Yes.
And then you end up on the wrong side of history. And then there has to be a reckoning. And sometimes that's a war, and sometimes it's other things. Sometimes it's a massive global economic conflict. Sometimes it's the suffering of people. But in all things, it's a point in human history where there's a decision point, which is, do we continue down this path where it is so difficult, where it is against what is it? Martin Luther King says, the pendulum of righteousness swinging, versus making those other decisions that are more humanist, I guess. Yeah. Even though I know we're talking about alien cultures, but my point about this is that I feel like you get this heroes on both sides thing, because I don't think anybody looks at a conflict that they're in and thinks they're the bad guys.
No. I mean,
I think
a good example.
I
was looking in advance of this. I was reading a little bit, or I was trying to remember some things. And a good example of this, back in antiquity, would be like the Peloponnesian Wars. So like Athens on one side, Sparta on the other side. There were literal classic heroes. Artemisia and Theseus on both sides of the conflict, and one rose out of Sparta ended up, well, at least in the Ionian portion of the wars. Sparta ended up kind of being the ruling power for that period of time, took over from Athens. And they both would have seen themselves as the heroes. There was no that I'm aware of. There was no like, Athens, you did this horrible thing, we're now at war with each other. It was the war, and they went to war with each other because they had different ideas about things. That's kind of the other example where there are very clearly heroes on both sides, and neither of them see themselves as the antagonist or we've done the bad thing, we're horrible, we're taking over. That's not how they see it. But I think that's what that's what's so interesting about stories like this, and why I'm very much with you that it was a missed opportunity by Dave Filoni and the crew writing those episodes, that they really could have carried that thread more through more of the Clone Wars and turned it into, I know they were trying to keep it dark and light at the same time, as far as like not force related, but sort of dark and light from an audience, like how much you can how palpable it is for most people to actually consume this content and enjoy it. But I really feel like there could have been almost a more slow decline into the darkness of the Force and the darkness of Anakin's journey and the darkness of the Republic fading, like coming to kind of crashing and burning, more so than they did. And I think it would have resonated with an even broader audience had they done that. Oh, lost your audio.
Sorry about that. I feel like you said it perfectly, and I would just say I agree. I think Dave Filoni and his team did a great job in actually trying to right a wrong that's in the movies.
Yes, 100%.
And again, it's like you see this topic too, and even the sequel trilogy, where righteous people like Finn are in the First Order, and he's able to make a choice and recognize that there is evil on where he is, and he needs to leave that, and he ultimately takes on a thing that he was brought up to fight against, and supports the resistance. I just think that the missed opportunity was, if you're going to say there's heroes on both sides in the episode 3 crawl, if you're going to say evil is everywhere, which we know that there is, we know that Dooku and, talk about like a weird galactic game of Mousetrap. Then I'm going to install you as the head of the Separatists, and then I'm going to be the head of the Republic, and then we're going to have each other fight it out. It's crazy. What I think is the missed opportunity is more of the aliens that we should have seen on the, we should have seen that slow, steady rise of fascism on the Republic side, where you actually have Anakin say things like, Anakin's already talking about fascism in episode 2. And then in episode 3, he says, you're starting to sound like a separatist. This is what I mean by it's a missed opportunity, because the seeds of it are all there.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by it's so weird that we know where the story's going. There's the Empire and there's the Rebel Alliance. And the Rebel Alliance is the one to restore the Republic. I feel like what that should have been was there's the Republic, which is becoming the Empire. It's moving into fascism. You even get that sequence where it's the marching stormtroopers that are, Anakin does unforgivable acts in episode 3. You can't come back from it. There's no explaining it.
In the Clone Wars, I was watching something the other day. In the Clone Wars, in at least a few episodes, he commits what we would consider to be war crimes.
Crimes.
And one of them specifically is one that I think falls under the radar often, which is he offers surrender to a force and then goes back on that and then attacks those people. And essentially it was in the Battle of Ryloth. And essentially what it does is it lets your opposing force know that you are willing to sacrifice the people of that planet by saying, I surrender. So they put things down, putting those people in the middle so that you can then come in and a sneak attack on those people. You're basically just saying, I'm not super worried about the people here, just so I can win a battle. It's like, we would consider that in the Geneva Convention. That would be a war crime. Like you cannot do that. And he does it. repeatedly in the Clone Wars. I really wish we could have seen more emphasis put on that it gets known and heard about by other people, and it's talked about in the character arcs and all that type of stuff. It would have been really interesting to hear that and make Anakin's fall more holistic, where it's not just this one thread over here of like the distrust of the Chancellor and all those things, but it's like this thing here because you're doing all these things, and this thing here and this thing here, that you see him slowly getting more and more frustrated, like he's being attacked from all sides essentially. I don't know, it would have been interesting to see that.
Yeah, I feel like it's a missed opportunity. I would have liked to have spent more time learning about I would have loved the Separatists to have been more complex, which they are in the Clone Wars, but not in the movies. I would have loved to have spent more time with them. I would have loved for them to have been the aliens that we then see in the Rebellion. And there's no reason to create a third group, which is what happens. We have the Republic becoming the Empire. We have the Separatists that go who knows where, and then we have yet at the end another group that has to become the Rebellion. So
I totally agree. Awesome. This has been good. Even with 25 minutes, we were able to get into that. It was excellent. I'm going to throw this up on the screen real quick so I don't forget. Oh yeah.
Oh no, I'm number 2. I'm person 2 now.
You are person 2.
Yes.
I will fix that. Sorry, everybody. There, we'll do that. But we had the make it go again. There we go. I want to make sure to flash that up this time. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We've had several people on the show tonight, and I really appreciate it. Rich, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
As always, for being here. Hit subscribe. Thank you. If you don't mind, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe. We'd love you to do that. Like the show. That's why we do it. We have fun talking about these subjects. And catch us next time. I think we're about done for tonight.
Good deal. Hey, thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your night, morning, wherever you're at. We'll see you soon.
Hey, bye, everybody.